Hey you guys, it's Catherine Joy. Welcome back to my channel. It has been a long time since I've done a sit down video with you guys. Actually, since I've had 2 kiddos. And I think the reason why is because sometimes it's hard to set up the whole video and get that concentrated time to film in peace and quiet. So I can do the intro or I can do the outro, but doing both can actually be kind of tricky and time consuming. So Lucy might be joining us for the second half of this video, but we're just going to dive right in. And I am going to share with you some of the tips and tricks I have learned from having 2 under 2. And there are so many more qualified mothers out there, I feel like, who have multiple kids, or mothers who are just simply doing it better than I am. But I would like to just share what I've learned, and hopefully it will be helpful for you as well. So the first thing I want to do is create a disclaimer, and that is I absolutely believe that God chose you to be the mother of your kiddos and for you to make decisions regarding how they are raised. And so by the same token, I would ask that you would give me some leeway, because there's definitely controversy when it comes to anything dealing with educating, raising, training, anything that has to do with children. And I would just like to point out that this is not the right way. This is just a way that works. This is the way that works for Elisha and I, and obviously you or you and your spouse have to make those decisions for your children. And I absolutely believe that whatever decisions you are going to make for them are going to be the best decisions because you have their best interests at heart. I also think it's super important for parents to be fluid in parenting. Absolutely, there are things that Elisha and I are 100% convicted on that we just believe is the right way to do things for us. But there is a lot of gray area in parenting, and there's a lot of subjectivity when it comes down to making the right decision for your child. I mean, when it comes down to swaddling your child, or pacifier, no pacifier, vaccinations, no vaccinations, child wearing, snacks, no snacks. There are just so many things out there. So all of that being said, this is what works for us. This is what we're doing right now, and hopefully it will be helpful for you. So 2 things I think it's important to keep in mind as a parent of any children, but especially with 2 little ones, are you need to be scheduled and you also need to stay flexible. And those might sound like totally competing statements, but they aren't. So for me, scheduling has been a big reason why I'm able to still have a life after kiddos. And staying flexible, though, is a way that we aren't just so tied to our schedule and so uptight. You know those parents like that where they're like, oh no, we can't do that because that's during Susie's nap, and like there's no way Susie's missing 10 minutes of her nap. For instance, last night we were at a birthday party. Leon was up till 10. That is so not ideal, you guys. I try to limit that as often as possible, but sometimes there are times when that happens. Or this week we were visiting Elisha's grandfather who was in the hospital. And you know what? We couldn't make it convenient for us to visit him. We just had to visit him when we had that opportunity and show him love. And so that happened to be at a time that was late at night, and Leon just had to be okay with that. So in this video, I'm going to share some ways that I do schedule and some things that kind of help me stay flexible. Tip number 1 might not sound like a tip for 2 under 2 at all, but I absolutely believe that it is. And that is prioritize your marriage. My mom always said the biggest way that you can love your kids is by loving your spouse. And I absolutely believe that to be true. Elisha and I both grew up in homes where our parents loved each other, were committed to each other. And as a child, that just makes you feel so secure. And I want to give that same gift to my children as they are growing up. Also, when you have 2 kids under 2 years old, there is instantly more strain on your marriage. There's more pull, there's more whininess, there's more like grating on your nerves, there's more needs that need to be met. So if Elisha and I aren't super intentional about working on our marriage and setting aside intentional time for that to happen, not only is our marriage being pulled apart by the children, but we aren't able to love them in the way that we want to because maybe we're snapping at each other. So there's more angst in the house because of that. When Elisha pours into me and I pour into him, we are so much more capable of parenting our kiddos. I'm just going to give you a couple tips and ways that we do that during this season. One of them is absolutely date nights. And we are so blessed to live near family that are willing to take the kiddos once a week for us to get a date night. And I know we are so spoiled. But there was a time for about 4 months when my family was gone. And because of that, we paid for babysitters. And it does get expensive. But you guys, we do $20 dates. And even if you can get a babysitter for 2 hours, and then you go out to pizza or just get some uninterrupted time without children. It could still be cheap or cheaper, and it doesn't have to be this really fancy restaurant or an extravagant thing. Going out to movies actually costs a lot of money, we realize, so we just cut that out of our dates. And it's just intentional time to be without the children. Or you could absolutely do date nights in, which is something we also like to do. And one way that helps us do date nights in is that we do not have a TV in our bedroom, and we do not leave our phones on in our room. So they are in airplane mode as soon as we go to our room. So even if we don't set aside an intentional date night, every single night we have hours where we are able to talk to each other. And sometimes we read, it's not like, okay, this is intentional talk time, but often we choose to talk because we're just laying there and we aren't ready to go to bed yet, and it's like, hey, how was your day? What's going on? And we're able to dream and talk. There's one thing that I think is huge for setting aside this time without children. When Elisha and I are having a tense conversation, or it's something I don't want to talk about, or he doesn't want to talk about, it's really easy to use the kids as a distraction and as an excuse. And all of a sudden, oh, sorry, gotta go do this. There's a pressing need. But when it's just you guys and you're able to talk and spend that time together, I don't know, it's huge for us, and I think it could be really beneficial in giving you that strong foundation. Instead of letting kids pull you apart, you're able to have more grace for the kids because you're feeling more love towards each other, and you're able to fill each other's cups. You can both outpour on the children instead of taking from each other, and then the kiddos are taking from you, and pretty soon you feel like completely empty and completely drained. Okay, so scheduling. This is so controversial, but I'm going to say the ways that I schedule our kids and how I think it's helped me. Leon is 16 months now, and he goes to bed at 7:30 every single night. For a while, he went to bed at 7 every night, and now he has, a little special time and he gets to go to bed at 7:30. So that gives Elisha and I a lot of time by ourselves. Lucy doesn't go to bed that early yet. She goes to bed around 8:30, but scheduling those early bedtimes for kiddos leaves you and your spouse more time to get things done that you want to get done, and also more time for each other. Also, training your children to nap at the same time is huge. And when moms have told me, how do you get stuff done? Like, I have one child up, then I have the other child up, you just never get a break. And I'm like, yeah, you never get a break. Like, how do you do that? That's not something that I want to do. And so when both kids nap at the same time, so helpful. If you guys want me to do a video on sleep training, I know that's also controversial, but the way that I sleep train our kiddos to sleep through the night at between 6 to 8 weeks, and how I train them to nap at the same time, then comment below. I also schedule feedings. So for Lucy, I nurse her every 3 hours. Again, I'm not perfect on this, you guys. Like, if something's super important, then I might drag her out a little bit longer. Or if I need to leave her with Elisha, then I might nurse her a few minutes early. This helps for a few reasons. One, it helps you anticipate what your child needs. So if they're fussy, then you know. Or if you're going to be out grocery shopping, you know not to do it at that time. They also know what to expect. So they know not to just whine all the time. They're like, you know what? I'm going to be happy now. I'm going to start fussing when my body starts telling me I'm hungry, which will get on a schedule of 3 hours if you're consistent in doing that. Scheduling ultimately really helps me have a life. And I see parents sometimes of even one child, and they aren't able to do things that they wanted to do before. They can't have hobbies, they can't have interests, they don't have time to go work out, they don't have time to go out with their spouse, and it's because their child is just demanding all the time. Believe it or not, babies are a lot happier when they aren't in a state of constantly demanding things, and there's boundaries, because then they can know what to expect, and you can know how to anticipate. So this helps me when I go grocery shopping. I know, okay, both kids are fed, both kids are well napped. We're gonna have a great few hours here. And it allows me to go out to events, go to parties, and know what my children need and how to best serve them. Absolutely, there are life changes that come with having kiddos. It's not worth it for Elisha and I to stay out till midnight or 1 a.m, because the next day we're going to be drained and they're going to be exhausted. So absolutely, your life should change with having kids. And there's some changes that are going to be harder than others. But your life doesn't have to completely be over when you have kids. You can still have hobbies and interests and still have time to yourself to get things done, to refuel, and have time for your spouse. That's all I'm saying now. Okay, so training your oldest is a tip that's been huge for us. We started when Leon was just crawling, and we just started teaching him don't get into cabinets. We just started teaching him the no-nos in the house. I haven't child-proofed my house. And there's certain things that Leon just knows he can't touch, or we're consistent in disciplining him. And obviously we are not perfect in this area. Some things that Our goals are to train Leon to not whine, to train him to know how to sit still, to train him to not touch things that we don't want him to touch in the house that could be dangerous for him. This really helps me be able to focus on Lucy, or to be able to focus on whatever I'm doing and not constantly be like, oh, no, stop, don't touch that, no, and then getting up and running over there because he touched whatever, or because he stuck something in his mouth he wasn't supposed to. When I say no, he knows it's no. That's it. Does he test us? Absolutely. He is not a perfect kid. And also, when people come down to disciplining children, you can do it a lot of different ways. And I'm not going to make that call for you as a parent. The more you can train your older child to be obedient and to listen, the less you're going to be strung out and like pulled in two directions at one time. This video is getting so long, guys. I'm so sorry. Okay, I have a few more tips for you. One is playtime in their crib or blanket time for your oldest child. This is awesome, you guys. So Leon will be happy playing in his crib for about 20 minutes at a time, which is super helpful. We've also started implementing blanket time, where he sits on a blanket, he knows his boundaries, and he's able to play with toys there. It takes training, it takes time, it takes effort, but once he knows, okay, these are my boundaries, I just stay here, it is so nice. Even if you get 5 or 10 minutes where you're able to do something where you know exactly where that crawler or that toddler is, not only does it give them some space to have some alone time, but it also gives you space to be focusing on whatever you need to focus on, the other baby or cleaning up or whatever. Okay, my biggest tip for remaining flexible is snacks. I have snacks in the car, I have snacks in my Deborah bag, I have snacks all over my house. When Lucy was just born, I had to really try to concentrate because nursing was really difficult. I was able to just give Leon snacks. Same thing in the car, if we're on a long road trip, if he's whiny, if he's tired, if we're keeping him up late at night, snacks. Okay, another tip is letting your older child be independent. I know we want to keep our little babies forever, but letting children develop independence can actually be super helpful and take pressure off you as a mother for meeting everyone's needs all the time. So for instance, when Leon was really little, like way little, he wanted to try to feed himself, so I just would put a spoon at the table, and half the time he just like hold the spoon in his left hand and just eat with his right hand. But now he feeds himself. And is there a huge mess? Yes, there is a huge mess, but he's able to sit there for 20 minutes, feed himself, make a complete disaster, and I can go over pick up the mess in 5 minutes, but it gave me 20 minutes of time where he was engaged. So letting your child develop independence isn't a bad thing. If they want it, go ahead and give it to them. And obviously more kids are going to be dependent than others, but allowing Leon to be independent in ways that he wanted to be, even like crawling up the stairs or stuff like that, has allowed me to have more uninterrupted time and for him to be more engaged by himself. So before this next tip, I want to say absolutely being a mother is a full-time job. You are doing what God created you to do, what you are called to do. Being a mother and a wife is huge. It's physically, emotionally, mentally taxing. And if that is your 100% job, then you are being a success. And I think there's so much pressure out there in the world to, oh, you're a stay-at-home mom, what else do you do? What else do you do? Like, you are on 24/7. So I don't think you ever need to put more pressure on yourself to be, do, or have anything else aside from focusing on your task of being a mother. That said, if you do have other goals or hobbies or ambitions, for me, I love YouTube. I run a network marketing business with my husband. I help him with some other businesses. I'm training for a triathlon. I have things that I honestly really want to do by myself. And so time blocking is a way that I'm able to kind of juggle all the balls, and yeah, they drop all the time, okay? I'm not saying I'm perfect at this, but this is a way that helps me fit in time for those hobbies and stuff. For instance, I just have 2 time blocks and they alternate and I have to stay flexible. So for instance, my kids are sleeping right now. So that is one time block. That's the time block when they're asleep. When they are asleep, I do things that require complete silence or complete focus. So for instance, filming videos, doing voiceovers, calling people for my business, reaching out to people for my business, crafting emails, requests, stuff like that. Leon does not like me on my computer at all, so I try to do my computer time when they're asleep at night or when they're napping. The other time block is when they're awake, so I have to stay flexible with this too, but this is laundry, cooking, cleaning, working out sometimes. Those are all things. Leon's happier when he just sees me moving around. I can interact. I can give him toys to play with. I can give him a spoon to lick. I can also put Lucy on my body and like a front carrier. And so I walk around the house when I clean up, and she's happy when I do that. She's not happy if she's in the front pack when I'm sitting down, right? Kids know when you're sitting down, they don't like it. So I choose to do the things where I'm constantly moving when my kiddos are up. And I just have to be flexible. Like if they're going down for a nap and the house is a disaster, I just turn on my camera, I get going, right? This morning, they were actually up for a long time, so I was able to clean the house and do all that before they went to bed, and then I was ready to pull out my camera and start filming. So I just kind of play it by ear, but those are kind of the time blocks that I use when they're awake and when they're sleeping. I have different tasks at different times. Okay, so I have 2 more tips for you guys, and then I will let you go. First one is prioritize. So this means you have to be okay sometimes with your kids crying and with your house being dirty. And I'm gonna explain why. There are going to be times when both your kids are crying. That's just the way it is. And instead of beating yourself up and saying, I am such a bad mother, both my kids are crying, I can't fill both their needs, and crying yourself, know that it's okay for kids to cry. It's actually healthy. You think of it, if you never cried, all that emotion just bottles up. I love being able to cry sometimes, just release that emotion. And it's not bad for kids to cry for 5 minutes either while you're prioritizing which kid to take care of. So don't beat yourself up. You aren't a terrible mom when both your children cry. It's going to happen, and just prioritize who you need to go to first. The other thing is prioritizing your house. Sometimes you have to be okay with your house being dirty or less than what you want it to be. Now, I'm all about a clean house. Like, I love a clean house, but I prioritize what times it's most beneficial for my house to be clean. So for instance, right when I get up in the morning, I like my house to be clean because it makes me more productive. I also really want the house to be clean before Elisha comes home, because he's coming home and I don't want it to be a disaster. I want him to want to come home. And then the other thing is right before I go to bed. Those are the 3 main times when I want my house to be clean. In the afternoon, sometimes I have to say bye-bye to a clean house and just be okay with it being less than in order for me to get more things done, because you can't just spend all day cleaning up your house and it can feel like you're on a hamster wheel. My last tip is make time for yourself. And you've heard this one before, but I just really want to challenge you. When you make time for yourself, make time for things that fill your cup, not for social media. And it's so easy when we have time for ourselves to flip on the computer. I am so guilty of this, you guys. Go to YouTube, go to Netflix, go to your phone. That is not what fills you. And whenever you have those times of feeling overwhelmed or less than as a mother, or you're comparing yourself, or you feel like you aren't doing enough, none of those things are true. You are absolutely doing enough. Turn off your phone, delete your apps. Elisha and I take turns taking full days off of being online, and that just really refuels my soul and helps me get back on track and reminds me that my job is so important. I don't have to keep up with the Joneses, and God has created me specifically to be my children's mother. So sometimes that can mean time in the morning. I don't take my phone off of airplane mode until around 10 o'clock, like 9 or 10. And sometimes that'll change if it's like, okay, I absolutely have to, text someone because I'm coming over to their house or whatever. But until I've had that time for myself, I don't take my phone off airplane mode, because I'm not ready for the day. I'm not ready for the barrage of notifications and questions and emails and texts and everything else that we have going on our phones. It's just too much. And sometimes just paying for a babysitter so you can get an hour or 2 away. Or maybe your husband can take the kiddos for a little bit or something like that. Just make sure you're taking those bits and those chunks of time to refuel and to fill your soul and to do things that enable you to pour out on others. Because if you don't have time to take care of yourself, if you're feeling frazzled, if you have a colicky baby or kids that are constantly whining, or sometimes just the stress of 2 perfectly behaved kids is hard, then you aren't able to love your husband as well, and you aren't able to love your children as well. Just know that by taking time for yourself, you can actually be your best self, and you can do your job much better. Thank you guys so much for sticking out this video if you're still watching. I hope that this was helpful. I really want to encourage mothers, and obviously I'm a very new mother myself, but these are just some things that I'm learning on my journey of motherhood, and I want to share them with you as we go along. So if this was helpful for you, please give it a thumbs up. Feel free to share this with other mothers that might be struggling or are maybe in a stage where they have little kids, because it can be hard, but it can also be an absolute joy. And I wouldn't trade my kids for anything in the world. So anyways, I love you guys. Thank you so much for subscribing. It means so much to me. And I love just being able to share parts of my life with you. Have an awesome week.